Welcome to another episode of Done Dissertation Office Hours, where we talk with doctoral students and doctoral degree recipients and provide strategy on how to navigate the dissertation process and prepare for life after being a doctor and earning your doctoral degree. I'm so excited to have this episode. My name is Dr. Ramon Goings, and I am your host and founder of Done Dissertation. And at Done Dissertation, our goal is to demystify the dissertation process so that doctoral students can write and defend their dissertation in 1 year or less. If you're a doctoral student watching and you need support, I want you to tune in because we're going to get some insights from our guests today that are really going to help you navigate this process. And today's episode is sponsored by the Done Dissertation Velocity Coaching Program, a coaching experience with the goal to help you write and defend your dissertation in record time. If you're a doctoral student in need of help and want some guided support to finish the dissertation process, you can learn more about our programming at www.velocitydissertation.com. And you can go there to schedule your complimentary consultation, or you can scan the QR code here that is on the screen. It will take you right to our page. So I want to get into today's episode because I want to introduce you to someone who has not only finished and earned their doctorate, but is using it to leverage it as a business owner. And so for today's episode, we have Dr. Cheyenne Batista, who is founder and CEO of Firefly Inc., which is a professional learning community and education leadership consulting practice that specializes in conflict transformation for education and nonprofit leaders and organizations. I'm looking forward to talking and digging in more about Dr. Batista's journey. So, with that said, I want to welcome Dr. Batista to the show. Doc, thank you so much for being a guest today. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Dr. Goins. It's really, really great to be here with you today. I can't wait for our conversation.
Indeed. And so, just so folks have the backstory too, I first met Dr. Batista when she was a student because I was one of our organizations that Done Dissertation that we partner with is American University. And she was a student in that first cohort. And so I remember seeing what students in that cohort as they were first kind of getting in, getting acclimated. And now you all have finished and are doing great things. So I'm looking forward to diving into the backstory because I don't know the backstory before I met you in your doc program. So first things first, I always like to ask this because I think a lot of students, when they're watching this, they're like, I'm in a program, but I'm not sure how, I'm going to do this. So just backtrack a bit for me. Were you always someone that wanted to get their doctorate? Like what got you to this point, or was it something that just kind of fell into your lap?
Thank you for that. And thank you for the great introduction and for having me. I definitely think that the doctoral degree had been on my radar for some time, just as a child, from my early days in childhood, loving to learn. And so I think it was just sort of distantly on the radar. It was a sort of one day I'd love to do that sort of thing. And when the opportunity presented itself, it just happened to be, I wouldn't say at the right time, because when is it ever the right time? When do we ever feel completely ready? But it came at a time that I said, you know what, let me toss my hat in the ring and see what happens with this opportunity. And everything, the rest of the story really started to tell itself.
And so before you started your doc program, what was your background? What were you doing prior to going to your program? Were you already in business? Like kind of walk me through what was happening before we even get to the program.
Yeah, so just while in the program, while both applying for the program, throughout the program, and now, I had been running my education leadership consulting practice. I had been about 2 to 3 years in and then got started. I've been a lifelong educator. I started out in the classroom teaching in New York City public schools, where the school system that educated me. And I transitioned over time from classroom teacher to taking on program leadership roles within nonprofit and corporate settings. I've taught at a private school internationally and so forth. So I had been in different education settings. And after my master's, realized I really was passionate about school leadership. And so I had the opportunity to take on a role as a founding school leader. I got to design, co-design, and run this really wonderful small school community that we ended up scaling into a network of 2 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and a high school. So for the bulk of the time prior to my doctoral degree, I had been running and operating a network of schools and then transitioned into my consulting practice, which I'm still very thankful to be running now.
So what, for a lot of folks, they'll be like, why get a doctorate at this point? Like you're successful already, you're running, organizational schools, you transition to your own consulting firm. So what makes you say, I'm going to get a doctorate now?
hmm I think it's the inner sort of intellectual in me, the nerd in me, if you will, just loving learning. But also, to be frank, Dr. Goings, I had so many beautiful experiences as a leader, as a Black woman leader. I had just so many triumphs to speak of, if you will. And also, as like so many of us had got sort of thrown into the pool of management, of leadership, certainly with some formal training along the way, but also there are just some aspects of managing other people that, you sort of get thrown into the ordeal. And so there were just many experiences that I was having while experiencing these great successes, these great victories, that were also frankly challenging. And the literature at the time wasn't really putting its finger on what I knew I was experiencing, but I didn't have the words for. So it frankly made me very just sort of intellectually curious about what am I experiencing here that I don't have the words to put on, a framework to explain myself, reflection tools to guide me through this process. I had had coaches, I had had professional development experiences, but nothing was really putting its finger on what am I experiencing? Why does it feel like this? And why is it impacting my ability to thrive in this role in the ways that I had really envisioned for myself? And so the doctoral program gave me an opportunity to take those very questions. From the field to look at and examine through the lens of the literature. What does the literature say about this? What research exists? And is there a place where I could contribute to the conversation in ways that also matter a great deal to me? So that's kind of what, again, when the opportunity came up, I had already been juggling these questions and it just seemed like the right time.
No, that makes sense. And so, there might be people who are watching or get to this episode who may be contemplating doctoral programs. So if you can walk me through a little bit about what was your decision-making process about selecting the right doctoral program for you? And like, what was that thought process as you were looking at various programs?
Absolutely, absolutely. At the time, I was at a place in my business where I knew I couldn't go into something full time. I also knew that I couldn't potentially or particularly commit to something in person. So it was important to me that it was remote, but also at the time, I myself had sort of some stigmas about online programs. Is it going to be challenging? Is it going to be reputable? Am I going to have the similar experience to my master's, which I enjoyed so much if I'm remote? So I myself had to sort of work through: is a remote program going to deliver for me what I'm seeking? And then, of course, it was what type of university. What does the program I'm joining believe in terms of what it would be providing to me as a learner, how I would be supported, who's on faculty, what are they learning and thinking about? These were some of the early questions for me. I will admit my earlier questions were grounded in those sorts of ideals, as well as just the practicality. Like, can I feasibly do this? So how many hours do I need to be planning to commit while I'm also trying to run my business successfully?
That's great. I'm glad that you had more, you had way more knowledge than I did. I just was like, all right, I'm gonna try to figure this thing out. I'll check some programs that are around, contemplate some of that stuff, but not a lot. But that was smart to think about it, right? Because you're running a business and doing all these things, and trying to figure out how to make doc work fit into that. And so, as you determine your program, you select you're at American, you decide to join. What is that transition like into doctoral level work? Because I know for some folks, it can be a challenge making that shift from how it may feel as a master's program in terms of the writing level and then what's expected as a doctoral student.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I was the first in my immediate family to go to college, so that was its own sort of journey.
Sure.
And then I was my first in my immediate family, certainly to get a master's degree, and I pursued my master's at Harvard. So the rigor, the sort of even stigmas that come with that, and
Yeah.
what's expected of me, that was its own learning process. So still yet, when I got to the doctoral program, it still felt like such foreign territory. Every step was me sort of figuring out, okay, what does academic writing look like at this level? Certainly as we got to dissertation, like what does a dissertation even consist of? All I know is that it's really long and you communicate really smart ideas. I was coming in with very sort of fundamental knowledge of what it looks like to participate in this program, to give it the best of what I've got at this time so that I get the most that I can out of it. And so there was a lot of sort of learn as you go. I have to say, at American U, I was just really fortunate to be around just incredibly caring, thoughtful faculty. We were in the founding cohort, which was in its own, its own sort of experience. The sort of learn as you go. We were learning as a cohort, so traveling through the program together, but also having been in this inaugural situation, I think we all were sort of putting one foot in front of the other while surrounded by really incredibly supportive and dedicated faculty.
That's great, and I want you to do. I want you to be mindful, like the historical component of that, because like in my own doctoral program, we celebrated our 25th anniversary, and so we had the first graduate of our program come when we had this event, and so just know that you'll be part of those types of things as it
Wow.
goes down the line. So it's cool to kind of see what she was talking about. Like, oh my God, it was a whole different world, at the time when she was thinking up. So that's cool that you got to kind of be part of history in terms of that
Mhm.
program. And with that said, right? So you get into this program, it's new, you're navigating things. So at what point did you come into the program with a dissertation topic in mind, or was this something that you kind of had to just figure out as you went through coursework?
Yeah, I will say now in hindsight and having talked to a lot of my peers and just my dissertation advisor, who was incredible, Dr. Amara DeCure, got to shout her name out every time I have a chance. I realize now in hindsight that I was more strategic than the average person about this choice to pursue a doctoral degree and also how. My commitment to myself is, if you're going to do this, yes, do it for the fun of learning. Yes, do it to add more letters to your resume. Sure, there were those pieces. But also, I had made a deep commitment to myself to do something that felt meaningful. So to only pursue a research topic and contribute to the field in ways that I felt substantial, that I could look back and say, okay, this is a piece of me that I'm proud of and that means something, and so forth. That was one. But secondly, it was important to me to pick something not just something that wasn't just a passion area for me, but that was going to strategically contribute to the work that I'm doing now. And frankly speaking, position me best to be able to pay for the enormous debt that I was then going into in order to fund the program. So from the very beginning, I just kept my ears perked for what are the research topics and the things that we're learning that interest me, that I feel passionate about, that I have some experience in the field to sort of situate in context, or situate my learning in context, and that I think can be a benefit to the field going forward. So that from the most generous place, I'm contributing to the field, the research, my ideas, my intellect, and so forth. And I'm also positioning myself to, through my business, leverage what I've learned to be able to continue to contribute to what I'm making, frankly, and to pay off those student loans that are very much a reality for me right now.
Yeah, no, I get it. If I wish at the time of this recording, I wish the U.S. Department of Education would figure out what the heck they're doing with
Still
these
wishing.
things. Whatever they're doing with these applications is ridiculous. It's messing
Completely.
everybody up right now, trying to figure things out. So
Completely.
that was very strategic in your end, like to figure out how do I connect my research to the business side. So I think that's something even for folks who are watching that might be running a practice, like how do I connect what I'm already doing in my practice to my doctoral study so that it makes sense. And so,
Mhm.
for you, it was very smart to do that. And, talk a bit about just what your dissertation ended up becoming, and then we can kind of make that connection between that and the business side.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can, one more thing I'll
Yeah.
stick in is that, like I said, that those years were very much like figuring things out almost as if I was learning a foreign language. We all know there's a hidden curriculum,
Yeah.
hidden curricula in academia. And so through that process of piecing together your workshop, you had come to visit to talk to us, and that was influential. Just the sheer notion that one could approach your dissertation process with such a level of purpose that you can get done on a particular timeline. And it just was a way of thinking about the process that I had not been introduced to previously. And so it really kicked me into gear to say, this thing doesn't have to take forever. It doesn't have to be torturous. There's a clear sort of guidance I can give myself, even while I don't know exactly what I'm doing. And so, yeah, just I wanted to, shout you out, because I
Yeah.
remember very particularly that workshop, that conversation really just sort of shifting the way I thought about my process for getting it done. And so, yeah, did you
No,
want
I want to follow up with that because I just think about when you all were in your doc program. You started in 2019, is that correct?
to
Or was
2019?
so you all hit COVID like right in the midst, because that's when I started. We started working with you all was like 2020.
Hmm.
And so what was that transition like? Even though you were already online, but because of the program, but like what was that like trying to navigate doctoral studies, writing it, getting into the closer to your dissertation process and like doing all those things with COVID impacting, just everything.
Yeah, no other word but just hard.
Yeah.
Because for me, I was again just in the midst of I was navigating two experiences as a newbie. First, just having stepped into the doctoral program, but I'm a first time entrepreneur for the most part. I had done smaller things previously, but here I am in two worlds, just trying to figure out how to make them work. And I think I was in year 2 to 3 of my business at the time. And so imagine it's the process of applying to a doc program, then getting into the doc program and already situating your life, and then I'm heavily entrenched in running this business. And then along comes COVID, and COVID turned my business upside down. Most of my services were hopping on a plane, flying across the country, being in a room full of 100 people. All of that just got turned tipsy-turvy. And one of our services was specifically supporting organizations to talk directly about the ways that racism and sexism manifest in their organizations. The thought then
Yeah.
about doing those conversations virtually was just such a mindset shift for us. So I'm juggling two major shifts in thinking about how I was going to approach these things. And so, yes, to be just a few months into my doctoral program and to learn that, yes, we were already going fully virtual. So it didn't impact the program experience so much as it did, just as you know, our mental health at that time took such a hit. We were now like locked down in our homes. There's the fear of what is this thing? How is it going to impact me? I'm in New York. There's sirens blaring every 5 minutes. I'm living in Harlem at the time, across the street from the hospital. It was jarring to say the least. And it required some sort of like, okay, we got this. How do we figure this out? Now, what I will also say, obviously, fully acknowledging just the tragedies of COVID and just how it continues to impact so many of our lives and the losses that took place, fully acknowledging those elements of the experience. There was a part as a doctoral student that was helpful, that friends stopped calling to go to, do you want to go out on Thursday? There were no more dinner and birthday invitations. It did kind of give me an opportunity to just sort of hunker down and get it done. The cabin fever was real.
Yeah.
It was real, and it really did have its impact, and I had to figure out how to balance that. But yeah, so doing it during COVID had its immense challenges. There's also just an element that it just like forced me to hunker down and get it done.
Yeah, and so, as you're, approaching, you start writing your dissertation. You talk a bit about what your dissertation explored and what made you settle on that particular topic and study design for your work. That'd be helpful because there might be some people who you might want to leverage in the work that you've been doing in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. I really adored my dissertation topic. I never got bored.
Great.
What I looked at was how interpersonal conflict surfaces within interracial teams through the lens of the Black women leaders leading those organizations. And so it was a study that focused on the experience of Black women leaders and how to support them to thrive in their roles while navigating this thing that surfaces in our work, in our daily lives experiences, personal, professional, and otherwise, which is conflict. Interpersonal conflict is not something that we take a mandatory high school or even undergrad course on, yet we experience conflict all the time. We experience conflict more frequently than we possibly even realize. And most of us are not inherently talented about navigating conflict. And so what I wanted to do was shine a spotlight on just that conversation in and of itself, but looking particularly through the lens of Black women. I had just found that as a leader, I'm a superintendent of schools. I am accountable for the success of this network of schools while managing and supporting a handful of other principals who they themselves manage others. I myself had come up through the organization as a principal who, like I said, much of the role was just sort of like throw you in the water and just go ahead, you got this, you can swim. And so much of my dissertation was looking at some of these experiences that, like I shared, that I worked with some of the most incredible people that were so passionate, so committed to our children. We had just really strong sort of ability to produce something great. And along the way, there were just moments that I'm experiencing, and I'm sitting there going, if I did not identify as a Black Latinx woman, would I be experiencing this moment in this way? Or would these folks' perception of me be as they are if my identity were different? Because I was certainly noticing differences in my peers who identified as white or as male, or checked off other sort of dominant dominant identity and culture markers, if you will. So I just had a lot of questions around like what I just experienced. There was so much that was great, but there also was so much that was challenging. And what I think is important to name is there were things that were challenging that felt like, okay, I wonder if I weren't me, would this be different? But also, as a result of how I experience the world, is it informing how I'm then showing up for these folks in ways that are really great at times, but also not ideal? So there's just this whole ecosystem in which Black women lead that felt like it warranted more questions. Like I said, I had an executive coach at the time who was really great. I had professional development experiences, but no one was really equipped to speak to these particular questions while I'm in this high stakes role, expecting to produce results, not just myself, but through other people. So it just introduced a real opportunity for so many delicious questions
Yeah.
to dive into.
And so, what did you learn from doing? You conduct your dissertation research. What were some of your findings and things, insights that you took away from the project?
Yeah, I so many, many, many. I sometimes I wish I could clone myself 5 times
Yeah.
just to write about all the findings. But so a few things. What I didn't share, the dissertation of practice was entailed a multiple case study. It was a qualitative study. It was an intersectional qualitative inquiry. So, what it looked at was all the data through the lens of this intersection at race and gender. It was a multiple case study. The participants had never met each other before. And because it's a dissertation in practice, my challenge through the program was to design an intervention that spoke directly to the problem of practice. And so my intervention was a professional development experience that was in affinity spaces, meaning it was exclusive to the participants who had identified as Black women leaders. And we spent several days learning about all these things that I'm talking about, interpersonal conflict. We learned about the historical, the history of the experiences of Black women in society and the stereotypes attached to us and so forth, but also through the lens of leadership. And I supported the women to come up with their own framework for not just navigating conflict, but to see the benefits in conflict and see the benefits of their identities and to transform these really challenging experiences they were having into productive outcomes. And so the findings were just incredible. First of all, uh, as so many of us know, Black women around this country, around the world, are having some shared experiences. So to see their stories come out in the data before they had even met one another was really fascinating. So there were, and certainly throughout the study, as they began to really unpack what it means to be Black and woman in a workplace, in a leadership role, navigating conflict, and as we started to layer those pieces together, they had some really rich stories to tell. So some of the findings included that they had these shared experiences and what those experiences were. Certainly the what we're calling sister circles is guided by the pre-existing research, these affinity spaces that are specifically designed to get Black women in a space. We found that they were just incredibly impactful to the women. We found that the professional development experience, as self-reported by the women, had really immense impact on their leadership and on themselves as people. They really were seeing a great deal of a difference in how they were showing up as leaders, how they felt about themselves, how they, the extent to which they could thrive in their roles in the long term. We had one woman who was, let's say this, there were a number of the participants who had significant life experiences happening at the time, and participating in the study really changed the way that they went about making those decisions. So it impacted some major life decisions that they had for themselves. And I could go on, but it really,
Yeah.
really had a lot coming out of the study.
No, that's great, and that you were able to do that, and had those, findings and things coming out from your study. So, what would you say for the doctoral student who is trying to write the dissertation and just stumbling along the way, trying to figure out, like, what were some things that worked for you to keep the momentum going on the
Hmm.
project? I know you said you never lost interest, but like, what kept you moving this thing along?
Hmm.
Was there any strategies and things that you implemented for yourself?
It was very challenging. There definitely were some times that took a real pep talk. I've been watching the Olympics, our USA gymnastics team, and these incredible women lately. And there are these clips of them, and they're giving themselves pep talks right before they're competing. And there were moments that just resonated so much. These moments where you're saying, "You got this. You keep this going." What I'd say, one big thing that was very helpful to me is that when I found myself in the weeds too much, I just kept saying, "Go higher." So just like zooming out a little bit, because the weeds can get so complicated, and I'm trying to align this piece to that piece, and I'm trying to make sense of this over here. It was too much. So sometimes I would just like zoom out. And first of all, I guess I should say, sometimes I just had to force myself to step away. There was real power in these 15-minute walks. I would just, when I knew I was hitting a moment, I would go on a 15 to 20-minute walk minimum. And there's research on this, just what happens in your body and your brain as you're sorting through something complicated. So the walks were incredible. I had a couple of really supportive folks in my network who would just like walk with me. I had a wonderful dear friend who was a neighbor, and she would just say, "Let's just go on a walk. Let's talk it through." So there's that. And then just zooming out, as I said, when the details got too wiry, zooming out, reminding myself, what inspired you to do the study? What was interesting to you? And where are those elements of interest found throughout either this data you've just collected or the literature and what it's saying, but also what it's not saying? And just kind of those sort of, personal reminders of this. You got into this with some kind of curiosity. How can you tap back into it?
No, that's dope. And so with that said, I like to ask this question because I think sometimes people approach like the dissertation process as very scientific, but I think there's some artistic elements to this. And
Absolutely.
I'd be interested to know, what was your writing setup like? So in terms of, if you're going to sit down and write, were you just with a laptop? Did you need two screens? Did you have to have candles lit? Like, what was your to get the writing done? I'm always interested in people's writing setup.
Yeah, I started calling it the situation room for sure. Multiple screens. I find it really important to ensure the room I'm writing in is clean. So it actually was a helpful sort of break to take when my brain was getting too clogged. I would just get up and clean the room, because I knew then that if later I could get up and just sort of later when I would return, if I'm coming back to a clean room, that alone just sort of puts me in a calm space, frankly, spiritually and mentally, intellectually, and so forth. And so, yes, multiple screens. I had a notebook that was dedicated to the dissertation. So whereas most of my work was on my screen and digital, there were just some times it felt really meaningful and powerful to write ideas out. There was just something almost soothing about it, but
Yeah.
clarifying, because I moved from one medium to another. So I had a book, and it just by date captured my random thoughts. It captured a lot of the memos that I needed to keep to ensure that I was keeping record of some key interactions and key reflections of myself. I was really conscious throughout the process, Dr. Goings, of so I identify as Black Latinx.
Mhm.
I think we don't talk enough in the field about leading this work in ways that we ourselves as Black women can reflect about our identity. So I was constantly conscious of, okay, I identify as Black, I've been Black, and I'm light skinned. I have a looser curl pattern. What are the ways in which me supporting these women to both learn about their experiences, but also even navigate, like, even within our community of Black women leaders, there are privileges within. So having this journal just helped me to like write those thoughts out and make sure that I was not only being honest with myself through this process, but being able to articulate those thoughts to the women as I guided them through this process. Because there was just such immense trust and intimacy in the conversations that we were having. The study became very like sort of emotional in all the best of ways. There were tears, there was laughter, there was joy. And so the having the mix of the digital media with the paper and the reflective tools with the procedural tools really seemed to guide me through this process.
That's dope. Yeah, so I always like to hear people's back in terms of what they need to write. Like for me, I'm like, I need the screens, but I think when I was writing my dissertation, I had the laptop. I maybe had one screen, but I could write anywhere. For me, as long I can, my background in music. So if you're in a band, you learn how to tune everyone out and just hear what you need to hear. And so
Absolutely.
It didn't matter. I used to not matter. But now I have to have 2 screens set up. I need my office. I don't need it to be clean, but I just need I need 2 screens. I can't.
Yes.
It's hard to like get anything done without it now.
You're reminding me of two things. One is I can't listen to music as I write. I don't understand folks who can do it. I admire it. I need silence, or even better, I need white noise. And
Okay.
so there
Okay.
was a white noise track I found on my music platform that so much so that when they do the Spotify does the wrap up, like here's the track you listen to most. Embarrassingly, it was this white noise track, but that was key for me, just recognizing the need for silence. The second thing I'll share, I'm going to shout out Dr. Adit over at AU. Early in our process, in her class, she had us create a knowledge matrix. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept at
Yep.
all, but yeah, but basically, like by tab, helped us to sort our information as we found it. Even though I had the Zotero, there was a spreadsheet she had us make where it's like by tab, by topic, by author, by question, just sorting the information. We groaned so much when there was like insistence that we do it. When I tell you that matrix was just so helpful when I would get stuck and say, okay, what are you trying to say here? Having the information organized in that way really guided the thought process and the writing process as well.
Yeah, we tell folks, we teach our clients to do that all the time. It's like you need to have it like that. And I know for me, when I first started doing it when I was a student, our process, we had a comps paper. I think it was due. We had 30 days to write it. It was about 60 pages total, and I needed a way to organize what the heck I was reading. And so I went through that process. It took me about a week to categorize all the literature I
Yes,
had read. But once I did that, it became very clear. Like,
very clear.
this one author writes all these things. Oh, it's from his dissertation. He wrote like 8 articles from his dissertation. So I started like put the pieces together. It was like it made the web so much easier to see.
Very much so.
So I'm glad that you did that part. So that's cool. And so you get through this process, but in the meantime, you are a business owner as well, you're writing your dissertation. So what was the balance like between your business and getting through the doc program? Because I'm pretty sure there's other folks. We work with a lot of clinicians, and so a lot of folks might have a private practice, and trying to
Yeah.
navigate writing. So what was your setup like? And how you get through it?
I'm going to be very honest. During course load, like during class when things were predictable and you knew there were several papers due, you had to do certain level of reading, attend class, participate in class. During that time when it was predictable, it was more balanced, is what I'll say. I don't think I ever got to the place where it was balanced, but it was more balanced.
Sure.
When I got to dissertation part, there was just a lot of like inability to predict how long is the section going to take me to write.
That's
What articles am I going to find on this particular thing? And we all know the rabbit hole. And sometimes I would sit and say, all right, you're going to get X number of pages done in this given time. And before I know it, that whole time was spent down the rabbit hole.
Yep.
So I will say, towards as my defense started to approach, I don't know that there was a lot of balance there.
Should not be
However,
at that point. It's like, let me get out this program.
let me get out this
I
program.
get it.
Let me get things done. If I can say I was committed, I wanted to do something that I felt proud of. I know there's a lot out there that says like, just get it done. You'll be able to do some more of the work later. For me, I don't really necessarily have intent of being in academia full time. I wanted this to really sort of capture some of the thinking that would then guide my work and guide the work of others. So I felt committed to doing something really excellent. So there were just times that sure, I could have probably slept another hour or two, but I just wanted to put that final touch. And as you know, humbly speaking, it led to a couple of awards.
Indeed.
And so there were just, there was some affirmation that like, okay, this not only is this thing, can it contribute to the field in some way through your work and through it existing, but also you have these other big institutions that are saying, yeah, we saw something in your work that really was worth, meritable.
That's great. And with that said, you have your business, but I want to backtrack on the business because I'm trying to bring the business dissertation all together. So if you
Mm-hmm.
could talk a bit about how does Firefly Inc. start, and like what was the whole impetus behind it, and then we can talk a bit about what you're doing currently.
Yeah. Well, coming off of the 7 years that I described, I had been founding principal, and then I was in this hybrid principal role while being superintendent, and then eventually superintendent. Even saying that in a mouthful right now exhausts me. So I just was frankly exhausted at the end of the 7 years, had built something that we were overall really proud of, really special school community. So I just needed something that would continue to carry work that I felt passionately about, work that was contributing to communities I cared about most, but also work that would give me a bit more of that balance that I was seeking. I also, frankly, just needed some time away from people. Had been just like navigating so many personalities, so many leadership styles. Had a, at times really challenging experience with the person managing me, and lots that transpired after I had transitioned from the organization. There just was a need to say, let me put myself in a space that would give me the flexibility to continue to do meaningful work while tending to just a sort of healing and coming back to who I understand myself to be. That was one. Secondly, I really enjoy variety. So through Firefly, we have our hands in a number of pots. We have supported a number of organizations around the world, mainly within the United States. So the variety has been really fun. I've gotten to work with some incredible people, our training team, other consultants that I partner with or have hired into the business. So I was looking for fun, honestly, just something
Yeah.
fun, meaningful, and again, that brought all of these experiences together. And then, like I said, as the business started to unfold, I said, I really want to be able to bring more of the research into the work that I'm doing, because a lot of consultants, it's no knock to folks in the field who are on their grind. There are many consultants that are just taking an experience that they had and like treating it as the experience that everyone should have. And I just wanted to be careful not to be that kind of consultant. Like, how can I bring in the research, and how can I really deepen my understandings of what I'm doing as I'm guiding other people to make really high stakes decisions?
And yeah, so how do you see your dissertation work that looks at like interracial conflict and how Black women are navigating that? How do you see that now kind of seeping its way into your business side? And like how what insights have you taken from that that have really been incorporated into your business?
Yeah, well, a major focus for us, obviously, is the conflict transformation piece. We've had the real privilege of stepping into teams and supporting them either through really challenging team retreats or really beneficial and exciting team retreats just to address their team dynamic and so forth, to creating what we call transformative learning experiences for the past. Where, by the way, our birthday is coming up. This is a special week, actually. We're celebrating our sixth year in business. Yes. And so when we started, I wanted to make sure that we were framing our professional development experiences through the context of, transformation. These are not just workshops. Much like the dissertation, I enter learning experiences with the clients we work with through the lens of what's going to lead to change, like what's going to lead to some outcomes and some impact that feel really deeply transformative. And so we've been doing that work for several years. What I was going to share. Oh, so the sorry, the conflict transformation piece works its way in, but also, as you know, I teach systems thinking at the university now, and so there's a piece of organizational leadership, organizational behavior. How do we bring those understandings into the work of org leaders, nonprofit and social impact leaders, and education leaders that I work with? How do we bring these understandings to help them either develop a strategic plan for their organization or build the culture that they seek with their organization? So frankly, there's not a day that we are consulting with clients that is not informed by the various contexts in which I've led through the field, but also the enormous voices that are talking to me through the literature. So it's a lot of fun. On a given day, I'm just layering much of that work, and of course, with a specialty for conflict transformation and for supporting
Yeah.
Black women leaders in particular, and women leaders of color, to recognize there's something in the room here that we need to name, while I'm also navigating how to be a great organizational leader.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I can appreciate about the work that you're doing, right? Because a lot of folks will approach conflict by resolving it, right? So you hear everyone say conflict resolution. So once you resolve it, what happens next? That's why I like transformation. Is like we're gonna, of course, resolution is part of transforming, right? We're gonna resolve where we are and get to where we're supposed to get to. And so I
Exactly.
really appreciate that
And
with you.
if I can tell
Yeah.
you, so there, you're making me think of, there's several teams where we've had the opportunity to do this work directly attached to the dissertation. In one case, it was just that. It was getting the team to understand that conflict is not just something that you get through. Conflict is actually an opportunity. Like, how do we use this rich difference of ideas that we have, and frankly, the tension we're experiencing with each other. And I may not like you in this moment. However, we're a brilliant team. How do we use this moment to get to a better place than when we started? So our focus on conflict is just getting folks to reframe how they think about conflict. And in doing so, seek to build upon the tension that exists within that conflict to support teams to innovate better, to get along better. And why this matters so much to the education field and nonprofit and social impact field is because, one, folks are too busy being polite. So sometimes the best ideas in the room, but folks are just not in a place, they haven't cultivated the team culture where the person could say, hey, actually, I disagree with this. Here's something that I'm thinking. So just supporting teams to do that. But then there are the organizations who do that. In fact, they sort of thrive on the buts and the well actuallys, but they haven't then created the culture for how do you do that in ways that don't cause harm? Because some folks will show up with a well actually just to sort of show how smart they are. And sure, it may contribute a new idea, but it's doing something to the team rapport in the process. So just supporting teams to think through that and say, what is the role of conflict in our team and how do we want to embrace it? And so you're making me think of a particular team we worked with where we had this conversation and we did some PD and we did some consultation work, and just seeing the dynamics of that team shift from multiple folks just like sort of not speaking up for the sake of peace to just seeing this team now have a dynamic in which they almost have code words, if you will, for like, all right, we're about to have this moment. How do we lean in? And just seeing the transformation and how they work together towards even stronger outcomes because they are very willing to lean into conflict. Not only are they willing, they are almost excited about it, if you will, because they know what it can produce on the other side.
And so let me ask you this, because there might be organizations who say, "Oh, this sounds good," but sometimes some organizations don't want to invest in these types of things just because of whatever reasons they have. But can you talk a bit about what are the dangers for organizations if they don't invest in conflict transformation support, especially if
Yeah.
they're in an organization in the midst of conflict? And so, what are
Yeah.
the dangers by not investing in that type of support?
Definitely. We see it every day. And I'll start with me as a leader who, like I said, I had the chance to lead other dynamic leaders who often had great insights, great ideas, great experiences that we didn't always align either with my own ideas or with one another. And at the time, again, this is sort of Monday morning quarterbacking, thinking about how could I, as a leader, have navigated some of those differences in views more effectively. Again, while also navigating the harms that were being caused to me because of my identity and because of how people were interacting. So I know firsthand the costs because I now look back at my team and sure, we got many great things done, but to what end? And was it an end that was as good as it could have been? Secondly, were relationships severed in that process? When we don't take the time to really cultivate culture, folks depart ways. Like work is not a forever endeavor for anyone. So we break paths, but oftentimes it can be with relationships severed because we haven't figured out how do we navigate some of these challenging conversations. Costly to organizations then is the retention question, because when you have these experiences time and time again, and there are these either micro interactions or there's like a big blow up, because that's the thing, conflict manifests in so many different ways. It doesn't have to be a major argument. There can be sort of micro conversations, micro moments where it's chipping away at people's morale, how they feel about each other. And when those instances heighten, and when a person's sort of in their environment saying, these folks are not for me, this ain't it, they enter a fight or flight sort of status, if you will. And that leads to folks either quiet quitting, as we've heard the term really evolve over the most recently, and or just like outright quitting. Some folks abruptly, some folks marching off, just saying this organization wasn't for me. And there's just room for leaders to cultivate a place in which folks are having the conversation so that morale is boosted. Folks feel like, yeah, when I have a view that differs from others, that I can chime in, it will be heard, and ultimately supporting folks to stay longer in their roles and not seeing some of the premature departures we're seeing across multiple fields.
Yeah, and with that, when you were talking, it had me think about something else. Is like what happens for the leader? I can imagine there are a number of leaders that are very much introverted, right? And so their maybe first thought about conflict is to be passive and not approach it. And so, how do you help someone who is in that boat where something needs to be addressed, but they are either scared or just personality type doesn't lend itself well to just addressing conflict.
Yeah, that's the fun part, right? Like supporting them to identify, first of all, that this might be happening in your leadership, unpacking a little bit of the why and the how. What does the literature help us understand about this dynamic that you're experiencing? What might be some of the costs and so forth? So, working them through, again, we have formal professional development experiences, just sort of formal sessions that we design and custom create for these organizations. We have some coaching opportunities and also just some other programmatic elements, but it supports them through this process of what is going on here. Is this a topic pertinent to me in my leadership? A lot of folks, if I can be honest, tend to be in some denial. I might say that of myself at some point in my leadership, where you think things are fine, like folks are smiling, we get along. Oh, my team, they show up to the happy hour I just threw, and there are just more layers to a leader really understanding their organizational health. There is, of course, formal data to collect, surveys and so forth, but there's some things that those surveys, and those are important and they become a part of our work, to be clear. And the buck can't stop there. There's just so much that a survey won't tell, that this sort of roll up your sleeves and let's dig in as a team together can really help reveal. For leaders who want to see their teams stay for a long time and really work in ways that lead to better outcomes. And as we know right now, across education, across the number of causes that the many nonprofits that I work with work, these causes desperately need the ability for smart folks to be in the room, being willing to say, well, actually, I have a different perspective here. How can we stretch and just sort of redefine some of the ways in which we are approaching these challenges that have been, for example, in our education system for now generations, and we haven't figured it out. Now, just as good a time as ever to support teams to be able to go deeper on some of the conversations that they currently think they're having.
That's great. And I know we talked about before is that, you're getting ready to roll out a kind of new cohort experience for Black women leaders. And so if you could talk a bit about, I'm going to segue into that, but I want to know kind of what challenges do you see Black women in particular navigating as they're dealing with conflict in their organization, the things that are maybe unique just to Black women?
Yeah, I mean, just even as I'm talking, I myself am just thinking about, just the cognitive load. Start with conflict just in general. And, I encourage your listeners right now, think about the last conflict that you had. It impacts like if it was like a conflict that you care about. I'm not talking about a small bicker, and there are different definitions of conflict. We won't get into it now, but just think about the last significant conflict that you had. It's all encompassing. It impacts your cognitive functioning, your emotions. For many of us, it impacts our bodies. There are longer term health implications, sometimes acute health implications. So I'm thinking about just the sheer cognitive load for folks of any background. It can be really difficult to navigate those moments. Now, you add on the layer of leadership. I'm a leader leading through this context. I'm held accountable for leading my team to great results or leading my organization to great. That's another layer. Now, for Black women, you're adding on this layer of, okay, I'm doing all those things that all my peers are doing, and I got to navigate the misogynoir in this moment. Misogynoir is a term coined by Dr. Moya Bailey that speaks to the specific intersectional, simultaneous race, gender oppression that happens. So I've got to navigate what every other leader navigates, but also as a Black woman, I got to just be either sorting through what's happening here as it relates to my identity, or more harmfully, just ignore it and pretend that, oh yeah, there's nothing happening here that's related to who I am and how I show up. And it's not to say that every interaction is racist, every interaction is sexist or meeting at those intersections, but it's more so to say, Black women, let's take care of ourselves by being able to at least recognize the signs so that we can enter the space in ways that are healthier for us, that support us to navigate those moments most effectively, and to take care of us while the system continues to figure itself out, because it's not on Black women to solve the harms that are caused to us. However, there are some things that we can do to take care of ourselves in the meantime.
Yeah, with that said, if we talk a bit about kind of what this new program that you're going to roll out is and how it will be beneficial to Black women leaders and who is this for, talk a bit about that just so if folks want to learn more and connect with you about the program, they can do so.
We are so excited to be launching. Whereas we've done this training, these learning experiences externally quite a bit. This will be our first time in-house cohort-based experience. I'm looking for a group of Black women leaders. For the most part, we're looking for senior level leaders, folks who sit at the top of their organizational chart, the top, or just somewhere nearby. And we're going to spend some time in a multi-day transformative learning experience where we're going to dive into these very topics that I'm talking about. And those leaders are going to come out with their own personal framework for transforming conflict into productive outcomes within their teams, for themselves. It's our hope that through that, the participants will come out with having learned a lot more about navigating and transforming conflicts really productively, but also really centering their own mental health, their physical health, if you will, and their ability to thrive and sustain in their roles. So I'm super excited. We're going to be pulling in much of the research from my dissertation and also the work that we've been doing in the field. We're going to have a lot of fun. I like to deliver learning experiences that not just are enriching and really help lead to different outcomes, but are just enjoyable, rich, meaningful. And so I really hope that some of your listeners might consider and want to make sure we share some information with them for how they can join, if so.
Yeah, we'll do. We'll have that in the show notes so folks can grab that in the comments. But then also too, and personally, I know you have currently a couple of proposals out for South by Southwest. So if you talk about those, we'd love to. We'll put a link here and a QR code for folks to vote for Cheyenne. So make sure that we get some votes there. We can
Thank
talk
you so
about those.
much for that. Yeah, absolutely. You tell me when I should.
Yeah, go ahead. You can go ahead and talk about it. I'll pull it.
Well, so, there are two opportunities that we've submitted for. One is not just to have this conversation that we're talking about. So we submitted one. I think the link is there on the screen. It's for creating ecosystems of success for Black women in leadership. So it's much about taking much of what I'm talking about to think about, okay, how can organizations create ecosystems where Black women leaders can thrive, knowing what we now know, both through the study and through our lived experiences and so forth. And also, of course, Black women, what should you be seeking in the systems and the organizations in which you work? So not only is that conversation going to go deeply there, but what we're bringing in are a couple of guest speakers. There's Zakiya Jackson, who runs the Expectations Project, an incredible leader that our company, Firefly, had a chance to work with and support her team. She's going to be sharing much about her experiences and also the work that they do and how her thoughts, therefore, about creating ecosystems of success for Black women in leadership. And then, of course, we have the lovely Ife Ofor, who runs a really innovative executive search and integration firm and her work just swims in how do we identify places that are going to support senior level Black women leaders to thrive in the workplace. It's going to be such a rich conversation. So please vote for us. If you can scan the QR code, you have to do a quick sign up and so forth. The second workshop focuses generally on how to transform conflict into productive outcomes. So again, this conversation around what role does conflict play in our organizations? Why does it matter? And why should leaders stop overlooking the importance of this conversation? Because it just might be impacting you and your effectiveness right here and right now. So we're going to go deep there. The second QR code, I believe, is being shown on the screen. Please take a second, log in, and just and vote for us. And I hope to see many of you there at South by Southwest.
That is great. And so, as we get ready to wrap up, I would love for you to give some words of encouragement or advice that you have for yourself as you were navigating the doctoral program. What would you do different now that you've been through this thing? Is there anything that you would do differently or advice you would give yourself now that you just didn't have because you just didn't know what this process entailed back then?
Yes, I will say maybe three things. One is when you're in the weeds, do a step back. So just don't let the weeds get your brain too muddy. Just either go for the walk as your body allows, whatever a walk might look like for you, or stretching and so forth. Clear your mind, change the scenery, step away so that you can step back with a clearer head. Don't keep plowing through moments where it's just not working. There was another one I was going to share. keep staying grounded in your purpose. Like there's something that excited you about your topic. There was something about who you chose to work with for your research, and so there was something that made you say, okay, this is the best topic I'm going to choose in this moment for myself. So just reminding yourself of what that is. And that was the third thing I was going to say, which is there comes a point when we're just doing too much. So know what to let go of, know when you're just trying to do too much in a given moment, and really have an honest conversation with yourself about, is this thing that I'm obsessing about for the past few hours, is it really going to make a difference? Can I let it go so that I can focus ultimately on this finish line? Because as Dr. Goings has taught me and so many of us, and is well known for saying, you're going to have so many opportunities after you get the degree. Get that degree. This is not your terminal life's work. We would certainly hope that so much more is coming. So know when to let go, step away, get her done, and then you can do so many great things thereafter.
No, I love that. Thank you so much for that. And then where can folks find you, connect with you if they want to learn more about what you have going on personally and in the work that you've been doing?
Definitely. So LinkedIn, please. There's so much that we're hoping to do there. I have some virtual events coming up. We'd love for you to come join. So if you give me a follow on LinkedIn, and just stay tuned, we're going to be sharing some more information about that. My website, www.letsfirefly, sounds sort of like let's go, letsfirefly.com. That's for our company, Firefly Worldwide Inc. Definitely give us a visit. I would say if there's anything here that I've talked to you about today that feels of relevance, even remote relevance to your team, book a consultation. Let's talk briefly. I would love to explore some work with some of your followers, your listeners. And then we are on all the social media channels. So at Let's Firefly, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
All right, Doc. Well, thank you so much. I'm gonna put you behind the scenes for a sec to wrap up, but thank you so much for being.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so
Great
much.
combo.
Thanks. All right, good people. Well, thank you so much for tuning to this episode of Done Dissertation Office Hours. I hope these insights were very helpful, because I want to give you all, again, access to different folks who have leveraged their doctorate in very different ways. And so today you got to hear from Dr. Batista, who is leveraging her doctorate within the business, taking insights from the dissertation and applying to her business to help grow and scale the work that she is doing. So again, I hope this is helpful. And if you're a doctoral student that you are trying to figure it out, but still are getting stuck in the weeds, like Dr. Batista said, what I would suggest, if you need that more hands-on support, more coaching, more tailored suggestions and insights that will help you get through your particular dissertation process, I would invite you to learn more about our program and our Velocity coaching program, which helps you navigate the dissertation process. And you can schedule a complimentary consultation by going to www.velocitydissertation.com, or you can scan a QR code that is here on your screen. And with that said, I want to say thank you so much for watching. Again, my name is Dr. Ramon Goings, founder of Done Dissertation, and our goal is to demystify the dissertation process that you, the doctoral student, can write and defend your dissertation in 1 year or less. So until next time, I look forward to seeing you all soon, and cheers to a Done Dissertation.